She waited in the rain for 37 winters. They say it's rained on this coast for 37 winters straight. Not the kind of clean rain that cools the earth, but a weeping, a sorrow that soaks right into the bones of the town. I came here looking for a story. I just didn't know the story was looking for me, waiting by the cliffs where the sea and sky have been crying for a lifetime. The town's name is Port Blossom. It's a cruel joke, really, because nothing's bloomed here for decades. The streets have this permanent gray sheen. The houses were built to face the sea, with proud porches and hopeful widows' walks. But now they seem to turn their backs, their windows dark and resentful. Rust bleeds from every hinge and gate, a slow decay that mirrors the people. They move with a strange, waterlogged slowness. Their conversations are clipped, and their eyes are always scanning the horizon, like they're expecting the worst. You learn fast not to mention the weather. It isn't weather, it's a condition, a presence. Section 1. The Whispers and the Legend. I'm a folklorist, or if I'm being honest, a collector of forgotten things. I hunt for the tales that curdle in the corners of a town, the stories told so many times they've become truth. And in Port Blossom, every silence, every look away, screamed of a story that wouldn't die. When I first got here, my questions were met with a wall of quiet. The bartender at the tavern would just polish the same spot on the bar over and over. The woman at the general store would suddenly need to restock a perfectly full shelf. Conversations would just stop. It was a shared secret, a burden the whole community carried. It was a young woman at the tiny post office, barely out of her teens, who finally gave me a name. "You're asking about the rain," she said, not looking up from her stamps. "You should go see Elias at the archives. He holds on to the old words." The Port Blossom Municipal Archive wasn't so much a library as it was a tomb, tucked away in the stone basement of the old customs house. It smelled of mildew, salt, and old paper. And there, surrounded by ledgers of forgotten ships, sat Elias. He was ancient. His skin was as thin and translucent as onion paper, and his eyes were the color of the sea just before a storm. He didn't look surprised to see me. He just motioned to the chair across from his desk, a silent invitation. "You've noticed our climate," he said, his voice a dry rustle of pages. "Most visitors think it's just a meteorological anomaly. They don't stay long enough to feel what it really is." "I want to feel it," I told him. He looked at me for a long moment, a deep, weary assessment in his eyes, deciding if I was worthy of the story, or just another tourist of tragedy. Finally, he gave a slow nod. "The truth isn't something you can study," he whispered, leaning forward. "It's something you witness. The rain isn't just water, it's a promise that was broken, and a heart that was broken along with it. It's the story of Ilara." Section 2. The Backstory. As Elias spoke, he painted the past right over the gray present. 40 years ago, he said, Port Blossom was a different place entirely. The sun shone, the fishing boats came in heavy, and the air was full of life, not sorrow. And at the center of it all were Ilara and Finn. Ilara was the lighthouse keeper's daughter, with hair the color of dune grass and a laugh that could outsing the gulls. Finn was a sailor who knew the sea's moods better than his own. Their love was the kind people talk about, fierce and inevitable, as natural as the tide. They were supposed to get married when he returned from his longest voyage yet, a 6-month trip on the northern trade routes. He promised he'd be back by the first tide of the harvest, Elias murmured, his eyes somewhere far away. He told me about their last day together. Finn gave her a small, carved lantern. "So you can always light my way home," he'd said. "No matter the fog, no matter the dark." Ilara waited. The harvest came and went. The first autumn storms rolled in, lashing the coast with a fury the old-timers had never seen. Other ships limped back to port with stories of a monster storm, of waves as tall as cliffs. But Finn's ship, the North Star, never came back. At first, her vigil was about hope. Every single evening, she'd walk to the cliff's edge where they'd said goodbye and light the lantern. She would stand for hours, a lone figure against the raging sea, the small flame a defiant pinpoint in the dark. The town watched her with a shared, aching heart. But as weeks turned into months, and months into a year, something inside Ilara started to break. Hope curdled into a desperate ritual. She stopped talking to people. Her whole world shrank to that cliff, the sea, and the memory of his promise. People would see her out there, day and night, whispering his name to the waves. Then came the first winter. On the exact anniversary of the day his ship was lost, the rain started, and it never stopped. It wasn't a storm. It was a slow, miserable, unending drizzle. A weeping. That, Elias said, his voice dropping low, is when her grief became something else. It wasn't just sorrow anymore. It was madness, a curse. She screamed at the sea, called it a thief. She bargained with the sky, offered her own soul if it would just weep with her. And it seems it agreed. Her mind, broken by the grief, began to blur. She started seeing things. The masts of a wrecked ship in the fog that would vanish a moment later. She'd hear a ship's bell on the wind that no one else heard. She was no longer waiting for Finn. She was in a standoff with the sea itself. She was holding the sky hostage with the sheer force of her pain. 37 years. 37 winters of that same relentless rain. Ilara herself has been gone for decades. Some say she finally walked into the surf, taken by the waves she hated. Others say she just faded away. But nobody thinks she's really gone, because the rain is still here. Section 3, The Ghostly Encounter. Leaving Elias, the weight of the story settled on me like the damp air. The rain outside felt different. Each drop seemed to whisper Ilara's name. I knew I had to go to the cliff. It was exactly as he'd described it. A jagged tear in the coastline, overlooking a churning gray sea. The wind was a physical thing, pulling at my coat, trying to shove me back. The rain was colder here, heavier. It felt ancient. I stood there for what felt like an hour, just watching the waves crash against the rocks. The sound was a roar, but underneath it, I could almost hear it, a name carried on the spray. Finn. And then I saw her. It wasn't a jump scare. It was more like my eyes finally adjusted to see what had been there the whole time. A figure standing at the very edge of the cliff. She was translucent, a shimmer in the rain, her form flickering like a weak flame. She wore a long dress that looked like it was woven from mist and sea foam, clinging to her as if it were perpetually soaked. Her back was to me, her posture locked in that eternal, unyielding watch. I didn't feel scared. What washed over me was just a profound, bottomless sadness. It was the feeling of the town, of the rain. All of it concentrated into one spectral point. This wasn't a vengeful spirit. This was a wound in the world that never healed. I took a small step forward, and a gust of wind howled past, so cold it felt like it came from a glacier. The air dropped degrees. The figure didn't turn, but I felt seen, an acknowledgement, a silent communion between the living and the eternally waiting. I was witnessing her grief made real, a scar carved into the landscape itself. As I watched, the rain grew thicker, the drops so heavy it felt like the sky itself was sighing. Her form wavered, blending into the downpour, and then she was gone. Or maybe she was just everywhere now. Conclusion. I left Port Blossom the next morning. As my car climbed the road away from the coast, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The town was already being swallowed by the mist, a smudge of gray against a gray horizon. The rain hasn't stopped. It falls on the slate roofs, the empty widow's walks, and the grave of a lighthouse keeper's daughter that was never filled. They say the rain is her, still keeping watch. They say some promises can't be buried, and some souls never find their harbor. I came to Port Blossom for a story, and I found one. But this isn't the kind of story you just write down and put away. It follows you. It's in the sound of rain on your window late at night. It's in the low moan of the wind. It's in the unshakable feeling that somewhere, on a lonely cliffside, a light is still burning, and a woman is still waiting for a ship that will never come home. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing for more tales from the shadows, and let us know in the comments if you know any local legends born from sorrow.